on this story, we're joined in the studio by Brita Fernandez Schmidt. Now, she's the UK Executive Director for the group Women for Women International. Brita, fantastic to have you in the studio. We've seen the dancing and the marching. We've even seen nuns dancing, which was my particular favourite. What's it all for? What is the impact that we hope that this will have?
So 1 Billion Rising was created by Eve Ensler. It's the 15th anniversary of the V-Day movement, which is a movement to raise awareness of violence against women. And the idea behind 1 Billion Rising is really based on the statistic that 1 in 3 women worldwide are likely to experience violence at one point in their lives. So that kind of, if you make the maths, means that about 1 billion women in our lifetime will be affected by violence against women. And the idea is really, let's rise up and say that is not okay and we don't want that.
Are things getting better or worse? What's the global picture like?
It's really difficult. I think things are getting better in the sense that there is an increased awareness. I mean, we've just seen the images of how many girls and women and boys and men have risen up today and they've danced and they said no to violence, and that's fantastic. We've not seen that before, so it means things are changing. There's an increased awareness and people are standing up and raising their voices. I think at the same time we are also learning more about the prevalence, women feeling more able to speak out and to say, I've been raped, I've experienced domestic violence. So possibly we can see an increase in the number, but that doesn't necessarily mean that things are getting worse. It just means that actually we're learning more about the prevalence. But I think the situation is a horrible one where you have about 80,000 women in the UK, for example, being raped. But at the same time, we need to also look at the fact that change is possible, that we've seen over the last 20 years an increase in legislation against violence against women, an increase in awareness, and a movement that's speaking out against it. So I think both sides are really important.
And I guess the key question is always, how do you change an attitude? Is it up to us as mothers to raise our sons differently? Do we also need to be raising our daughters differently? How do you get into that root and branch of changing the way that we feel about things, or the way that we act even?
Yeah, root and branch, I think it's super important. That's exactly it. I think when we talk about root and branch, for me, it's about education, and it's starting it as early as we can. I heard the statistic about a third of girls between the age of 13 and 17 have experienced some form of physical or sexual violence in the UK. That's not okay, and they need to be aware that they don't have to accept that it is not okay, but also young boys need to be taught to behave in other ways. So I believe it is very much about addressing those roles that girls and boys are being taught, and that needs to happen at school, which is of course why one of the key questions that we were addressing here today in the UK was trying to get a bill that makes it mandatory to educate girls and boys around gender stereotypes and violence against women in school at an early age.
In developing countries, it has always made me want to ask the question, in these countries that are modernising at quite a rate, does the violence then get worse against women as those changes happen?
I don't think you can generalise. Women for Women International works in countries affected by conflict, for example, and so what we see there is that rape is being used as a weapon in war, and that the violence occurring as part of the war can come into the household. About 80% of the women in Afghanistan we surveyed recently reported incidents of domestic violence. But I think the important point is that women in those countries are also able to stand up and speak out and change the behaviour of men within their communities in a way that will see lasting change. So, but we're also seeing legislative changes. So I think the important, I think it's really important for us to realise that violence against women is something that occurs all over the world. Whether it's in the UK or in South Africa, or whether it's in Rwanda or in Congo, and the key. There are a number of key things that we need to do. We need to focus on education. We need to enable women to be more independent and to know their rights and to learn skills and earn an income so that they have got the negotiation power and the security that they can stand on their own feet and they don't have to put up with violence. But also their voices need to be heard at the decision-making table and at a policy table.
Brita, thank you. And of course, in the meantime, you can support Women for Women International, which I know is a fantastic charity. I support it myself. Brita, thank you.
Thank you so much.